This is Leemon Baird with Hedera. I very much appreciate being here with you today. I appreciate being invited. I appreciate you all coming and watching this. It is good to be with you. And I'm going to talk today about how enterprises are using distributed ledgers, how DLTs, distributed ledger technology, is really changing things now, and it is being used in a big way by enterprises. And I will talk through some of the issues that come up and some of the ways they're being used. And so we will talk about, there's a long history of people saying this would happen someday. This really is the year when it's happening. We are seeing huge movements of big enterprises and little enterprises to be using DLT for real world problems, real applications. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is some of the aspects of it, some of the challenges that the earlier ledgers had, and some of the requirements that you really needed to have real adoption by big enterprises. And then how Hedera has provided technology and how some of the use cases of how people are actually building on top of Hedera. And so we'll just go through some of those. And you can see, I think in history, of course, the adoption of ledgers for this sort of thing is exponential. So you could always say every point is the knee of the curve. But I think in a real sense, people are going to look back at this year as being the year when it was real, when it became real, when people really started to use ledgers for real world applications, big enterprises, for things that actually solve problems for them. I think 2021 is looking like it has been the year and will continue to be the year where that actually happened. Very exciting time to be alive and an exciting time to be at a conference like this. So the problem is, the early versions of ledgers maybe didn't have all the properties that big enterprises might want to use. They have enormous amounts of energy that they use, which isn't very green. They're extremely slow, which for some applications works, but for many applications, you need speed. And they're too slow. Costs were very high. That goes along with being slow. The costs end up being very high and maybe not even predictable. Security vulnerabilities of various sorts. And a problem with the transparency in the decentralization. You want your governance, your decentralization to be transparent, where you know who is running the system, you know how they are making decisions, you can see really what's going on. So there was some issues here that made it difficult for enterprises to use these things. What you really need is performance. Like we have tens of thousands of TPS, transactions per second. We can do 10,000 TPS, we're throttling it down to that right now. We have finality in a few seconds. You do want finality. You want to be able to know that when you submit a transaction, there comes a point in time when you know that it has gone through, guaranteed. And you need that within seconds. You need real security. Security that you wouldn't get from a leader-based system where shutting down one computer shuts down the whole network. But you need really asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant is really what you want, which is even resilient against malicious firewalls and things in the internet. You also want it to be proof of stake. You don't want it to be proof of work using all of the energy. But for security, what you really want is no leader and ABFT. You want it to have stability. Stability in the sense that it's not going to split, it's not going to fork, you're not going to have two networks tomorrow. That's fine in the early days of dealing with networks, but as enterprises want to build on these networks, they want to guarantee that when I put information out that the world's going to rely on this network, it won't suddenly become two networks with two different sets of information that get out of sync with each other. The world needs to rely on a single source of truth, a single network that won't split. But in addition to that, if you're going to have an enterprise building on top of a ledger, you need stability in the pricing. The pricing should not be wildly varying. It should just be a constant price. And not just a constant price in the cryptocurrency of that ledger. It should be a constant price in real value. So on Hedera, what we do is you pay for your transactions in H-bars, but the value of H-bars may go up and down. The price on the markets of H-bars may go up and down wildly. It's a cryptocurrency. But the number of H-bars you have to pay is a constant number of US dollars. So the price is denominated in a fiat that is not nearly as volatile. And so you can build a business on it. And these are the sorts of things that you need if you want mainstream adoption by enterprises. And it's what we're seeing this year. Very gratifying. You need governance. So you need good governance. You want to have not one person in charge because maybe you don't trust them. You want a lot of people in charge, and you want to know who they are. And you want to make sure that they care about their reputations, that they're not easily bribed to do something evil. And you want tremendous transparency so that if they do care about their reputations, they won't do anything evil. There are checks and balances on each other. And so we have the largest companies in the world doing it. We have them doing this in a way that is transparent. Even the minutes are published. This is what you need, is good, transparent governance. And since they're on all different continents, you don't want to have one government be able to take over all the governance. They need to be spread out so no one government can ever interfere. So this is what we're talking about. And then they should run the roadmap for how the software is updated, what new features are added. They should run the treasury management for whatever tokens are there. They should be doing all of those things. And initially, anyway, they're even running the nodes themselves. That will change over time, but just for ultimate trust at the beginning, you have to start that way. And then, of course, sustainability is a big deal these days. Everyone is talking about whether things are green and the effect that they have on the environment. And so we have committed to being carbon neutral. This network is carbon negative. We're actually better than carbon neutral. We have committed to having our network be carbon negative. So there are carbon offsets to eliminate the amount of carbon that it's using, to offset all of the carbon that it's using. And it doesn't use very much to begin with. So these are the requirements. To do that, we had to invent the hash graph rather than a blockchain. It does the same thing, but it does it in a much better way. And so it ends up being very fast, very low energy usage, very little electricity per transaction. It's very high security, ABFT, higher than any other major ledger. No one else is ABFT. This is the highest level. And it has a gossip protocol, so it's incredibly fast, and there's no leader. You can't shut down one computer and shut down the whole network. It just is spread out, decentralized, and fast and cheap, very secure. And so it meets those criteria we had on that first slide. And so the result then is that we built the system. So the circle there in the middle is the hashgraph consensus algorithm running on the nodes. That is the ledger. That is the network. It's the blockchain, if you want to call it that, though actually it's a hashgraph is used under the hood. On top of that, or on the side of that, at the bottom it mentions there are mirror nodes. There are separate computers that are constantly watching and remembering forever whatever happens. And they are given cryptographic proofs from the network. So with cryptography, you prove this is truly what the ledger agreed on. This is what all the nodes that made up Hedera agreed on. And these mirror nodes can know it for sure. And then they can answer questions for other people. And we run a mirror node and other people run mirror nodes. Anyone can run a mirror node that wants to at this moment. And lots of people are. And so you can get your information from that and know for sure that it was the agreement, the consensus of this ledger. And you get that definite consensus in seconds. On top of that, we have our services. There's lots of services. There's a smart contract, there's files, there's cryptocurrency. Two of them that I've listed here, though, are the consensus service and the token service. And the reason I'm mentioning those two are that I'm going to tell you about a number of enterprise use cases being built on those two things. For big enterprises, there is some use, some interest in those other services as well. But I think these two are the killer apps, the killer services that everyone is using right now, at least at the moment. And we'll add more services as time goes on. But at the moment, this is what enterprises really are interested in. And so they can use it for everything. For payments, supply chain, and decentralized identity, tokenization, data integrity, all those things. It can be used by enterprises. It can also be used by individuals. It can also be used by governments. It can be used by individual devices, IoT kinds of things. There's a huge range of uses. But today, I'm just talking about enterprises. Big companies or little startups that want to be big companies, these are the things that enterprises are doing today. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the whole thing then has this governing council that is extremely transparent and very decentralized. It's on every continent. It's in every country, actually not every country, but lots of countries spread around the world in different industries. And they're all the equivalent of Fortune 500 companies or top 10 universities. We have a couple of top 10 universities. We'll talk about those. We have a bunch of Fortune 500 companies. So that's how it all works. So then the question is, what can you do on it? Well, you can do tokenization. You can create tokens. You can create NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And you can create FTs, fungible tokens. And you can create these where they run at the speed of native tokens. So what this does is it gives you the ability for configurable compliance. If you want to create a token, you can control, is it, say, KYC? Is there a know your customer check that has to be done on anyone holding this token on every account? If you want to, you can set it up to be compliant with regulations that require that for your token. Or you can set it up without it. When you create a token, you get to choose. And so if you want to do regulatory compliance and all sorts of fancy things, you can do that. If it's just a token in a game and you don't care about this stuff, you don't have to do all that. You'd be very lightweight, very simple. It's entirely up to you. And the governance even allows you to do things, well, we'll talk about it. Scalability, you can have huge numbers of tokens. They're very cheap. They're extremely cheap to move, 1/10 of a cent to move one, extremely cheap. And so along with that scalability, and of course, 10,000 a second right now is what we've throttled it down to. It will be faster than 10,000 a second in the future. So we have this huge scalability. And then I told you the fees were low. They're not just low, they're predictable. So when I say you can transfer your token to someone, you can tokenize $1 million piece of art and sell it to someone for $1 million, and they send you $1 million worth of stable tokens or of HBARs or something else, and you do this exchange, you pay a whopping 1/10 of a cent. You've just sold $1 million painting for 1/10 of a US dollar, of a US dollar cent. So 1,000th of a US dollar. Incredibly cheap, and not only cheap, but predictable. It is denominated in dollars. You pay in HBARs. You have to use, of course, the cryptocurrency to run the network. That's what it's for. That's the only way you could do it. But the number of HBARs varies so that your actual cost is constant. You are not having exposure to the cryptocurrency market risk, which is extremely volatile. That's an extremely volatile market. You're not exposed to that. And it has built-in governance. I told you if you want to, you could force KYC or not. And you could design who is going to check the KYC. Similarly, you could make it a fixed money supply, no more tokens, or you could allow tokens to be minted and burned. And then you can control who is going to have the ability to mint and burn, and so on. All of these features of it can be controlled, and they're controlled by a key. Whoever does it gets the key, and then they are able to use that cryptographic key, ones and zeros, to sign the transactions that makes it happen. But it doesn't have to be a person, and it doesn't have to be one key. You could have 3 organizations and say all 3 of us have to sign. You have 3 different keys, and all 3 of us have to sign to make it happen, to make something happen. Or any 2 of us have to sign, or maybe any 1 of us has to sign to mint a new token, but all 3 of us have to sign in order to delete a token, or something like that. You can create your own built-in governance, and you can even make it multi-layer. You could say, well, 2 of the 3 organizations have to sign off, but within an organization, we have 10 different people, and at least you have to have 3 of those agree, or at least 10 of those agree, or at least 5 of those agree, whatever number you want. And so you can have multi-layer down to 15 layers deep. Built-in governance in the tokenization itself, even without using smart contracts or anything, you get all of this power. And it is a native token, it is a native layer token, I should say. And so it is just as fast as a native token. So 10,000 transactions a second moving it. At the L1, you can still do L2 stuff, but you don't have to. You can do 10,000 a second at L1. So this is what the tokenization service is. The consensus service is even simpler. You can send information through Hedera. You can send messages through Hedera. You can set up a topic and send all your messages through it. What happens is that there ends up being an immutable record of your data. All of the mirror nodes will keep it. And your data will be put in order with an immutable timestamp, and it's a consensus timestamp from all the nodes. You will know the middle of all the times that all these nodes thought about it. So when all the nodes in the network receive your transaction, it's whenever half of them had received it. It's the median of all those times. That's the timestamp that gets put on it. And all these nodes in the network come to a consensus on this is the exact timestamp of when you did it. So if you have some legal obligation to publish information by a certain time, you can prove it. If you have something like set up a stock market or an auction, hey, we'll be doing an auction next month. It'll be kind of fun. When you do an auction, this will put all the bids in order and you can tell who bid first. And you have Hedera doing all the work of putting them into order, coming to consensus, putting timestamps on them that have consensus. The order is in consensus. The mirror nodes all have a copy of it. You can query any mirror node in the world for the information or query the main net. And they have cryptographic proof that it's valid. And so this is publicly verifiable information. And you can set it up so that a given topic, the only messages flowing through it have been properly signed by one key, one person can do it, or you can set it up with the 3 organizations, each of which have 10 people, whatever kind of a structure you want, or you can just open it up to the world and say anybody can do it anonymously, can send messages, whatever. And then it is accessible to programs, and you can write them in lots of languages. So we have libraries for JavaScript and Java and Go and other things, but you can also use one of these permission private ledgers that have been created, Hyperledger or Corda. You can take them and put in a plugin at the bottom, and suddenly you feel like you're running a private ledger with all the advantages of that, but you have the full trust of Hedera because the ordering of those transactions is done by Hedera. The timestamps on those transactions is done by Hedera. So that's what we have. We have a governing council of 21 members. These are the biggest companies in the world, the biggest universities in the world. Just this week, we welcomed the London School of Economics, one of the top universities in the world, top 10 in economics, world leader. We also have University College of London. We have other universities in the pipeline. We have big universities. We also have big companies. So we have LG Electronics. We have Shinhan Bank. We have huge Google and IBM and Boeing. We have huge telecom companies, so Tata Communications and Deutsche Telekom. We have DLA Piper, one of the biggest law firms in the world. We have all of these people, payment companies in different fields doing different things. And they have their own use cases that they're going to be building on this. So that's our council. Energy transactions, the energy consumption per transaction is extremely low. So one published report that we saw said Bitcoin is 885 kilowatt hours, whereas Hedera Hashgraph is 0.00017 kilowatt hours. Much, much lower. It's even lower than Visa, even lower than credit cards. It's really low energy. And so the best way to be green is to use a very low amount of energy to begin with. The second best way to be green is to take that little amount and make it carbon neutral or carbon negative. And that's what we've done. We've made it carbon negative. So our network is carbon negative. We don't use much to begin with. And what we do, we compensate for. So we plant a tree or whatever, various ways of doing it. So I said we're talking about enterprise use cases. I think that what you've just seen is why this has turned out to be the year that the whole flood of enterprises are flooding in. Not just in Hedera, the blockchain space as a whole is seeing real traction. But Hedera is really leading the charge here on seeing traction with big enterprises because of all the factors I just said. So what are they doing? Well, Avery Dennison, that's one of our council members. We do eat our own dog food. Our council members are using Hedera because, well, in many cases, that's why they became council members. They want to be using this. They believe in it. So Avery Dennison is one of them. Most of my use cases, of course, will be other enterprises, not us. But I am going to throw in a couple of the ones from our council members because I want you to see how we're using our own system. Avery Dennison has Atma, Atma.io. This is a platform that allows you to track things. You know, they do things like labels, like barcodes and labels on cans and things. And they have RFID chips. So you can have barcodes or you can have RFID chips that identify a particular product, and then you can track it through its entire lifetime. So this is an example of salmon fillet, organic, proving that it is organic because you know where it came from, and proving that it is safe because it's been kept cold all along the way, and knowing where it went through so that you know that no shady characters were processing it along the way. You can see its history. This is the kind of thing that is enabled when labels could be tracked on an immutable history of the consensus service. And that's what they're doing. They're doing this on Hedera. ServiceNow is using Hedera in order to do real-time services like coming and doing maintenance or whatever. You can see the example on the screen. Could you come over here and fix something for us, please? And then you even see on the watch that you can approve it or reject it. I love that. That's really great for consumers. And so these trusted SLAs, service level agreements, are being done on Hedera for services service, like when you're maintaining and fixing things, that kind of services are being done. Coupon Bureau is an entirely different thing. This is when you spend a coupon at the store. So you clip out a coupon from the newspaper, it came from some giant company, and then you spend it at the store, maybe a giant store, and somehow the company and the store all get reimbursed for the discount that the user received from that coupon. Today, it's an industry that has inefficiencies, it has potential for abuse, there is a lot of fraud that fake users commit on the system, and the Coupon Bureau is fighting all of that by moving to a system on Hedera. I'm extremely excited. I mean, not moving, they're there. I'm extremely excited about what Coupon Bureau does. And so the Coupon Bureau, you may not have heard of them, but you've used them. Just like FIS WorldPay, you might not have heard of them, but half the time when you use your credit card, you're using them. Our council members are part of your daily life, whether you've heard of them or not. And then some of them you have heard. You may have heard of LG Electronics and Google. So, those names are household names. But Coupon Bureau is a huge company doing this. They have customers that include the coupon issuers like Procter & Gamble and General Mills, huge. And they have stores that accept the coupons like Walmart and Target, huge. The Coupon Bureau has this enormous amount of coupons going through. And by digitizing them and putting them through Hedera, you can know for sure that the same coupon isn't spent twice. And those who are creating the coupons can know that they were spent properly and legitimately, and the money they're paying to discount the price is legitimate, or the discounted prices they're giving is legitimate. And so the stores know that they're going to get reimbursed. And right now, reimbursing can take months. This could reduce it to hours or minutes or seconds. This is a huge thing. There are companies I can't even talk about. I'll only mention 3, but there's a Fortune 500 company that's doing VAT payment tracking on EU cross-border. So in the European Union, things that go across borders, you have to track the value-added tax, and they're doing this using Hedera for process integrity to stop fraud and to make things efficient and fast. And just 2 other I lied, it wasn't a Fortune 500 company, it's a Fortune 10 company. Big company working on a product engine that leverages HTS and HCS. Both our tokens and our consensus put together, and doing this to optimize workflows and doing this as a service to other companies, other enterprises, other startups. And then there's a Fortune 500 company doing NFTs for fashion and for collectibles. You have DLA Piper. This is one of our council members doing tokenization for fine art. They've got deals in the pipeline for hundreds of millions of dollars, but they're in a market that's trillions of dollars. This is big. DLA Piper is doing this. They're right at the forefront. One of the world's largest legal firms, they're doing tokenization for this. We have EDF, who's created markets in trading energy offsets, carbon credits, those sorts of things, renewable energy credits, RECs. And so REC DeFi, they're doing this. Very exciting, very green. Not only do we use a low amount of energy and offset what we use, we have people building on top of us that are doing amazing things. And EDF is one of these, just doing amazing green things to reduce climate gases, reduce greenhouse gases. You have Standard Bank. They are a member that is working on identity to allow new kinds of things all across the entire continent of Africa, in allowing new services to reach people that have never been able to do it before. Identity becomes the key to that, and they're doing identity, and they're using Hedera to do it. And I don't even have time to go into all the details of AdsDAX that's stamping out fraud in advertising with Hedera, and everywhere that's tracking those vials of vaccines for COVID-19. And you can check and see that this particular vial that you got your shot from was cold all through the process. There are thermometers in the fridges that actually send the information. You've got Goment and Suku both doing tokenization in amazing ways. I told you about RecDeFi doing these markets for green energy and offset credits. And Galaxy, started by Spencer Dinwiddie, is doing this, helping people to tokenize things, working for others. So these are just the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing this year. I think this year will go down in history as the year that ledgers became real and enterprises really were working on ledgers, starting to use ledgers in the real world to change the world. And as anybody in this community could tell you, they've been telling you for years, this is coming someday. Now it's here. And as they're going to tell you, you haven't seen anything yet. This is just the beginning. And 2021, I think, will be viewed as the year when the market grew up and was actually changing the world. Thank you for being with us on this journey, and thank you for the work that many of you are doing to change the world.